I cheated on my blind husband, then I took his order at McDonald's. The drive-thru speaker crackled. Then I heard his voice say my name. Not my order name, not Lena, order 42. Just Lena, calm, clear, like he knew exactly where I was. I looked up from the fry station, grease still on my fingers, and froze. Evan sat in the driver's seat of a silver sedan I didn't recognize. His window was down, his face turned directly toward me, not past me, not vaguely in my direction. At me. His eyes, those eyes I'd been told saw nothing but shadows and light, locked onto mine through the glass. He didn't blink, didn't smile, didn't move, just waited. The register girl asked if I was okay. I nodded, but my hands were shaking. My blind husband was staring straight at me from the drive-thru lane, and every lie I'd ever told suddenly felt like it was crawling up my throat. The kitchen smelled like oil and salt. The fryer beeped. Someone called for napkins, and Evan just sat there, watching, waiting, like this moment had always belonged to him. My hands shook so badly I spilled fries. I tried to steady myself, grabbed the fry scoop, missed the bag. Hot fries scattered across the metal counter, tumbling onto the floor in a greasy cascade. My coworker Jessa glanced over. "You good?" I wasn't. I was the opposite of good. I was unraveling in a McDonald's kitchen while my husband, my supposedly blind husband, sat 10 feet away, looking directly at me like he could see everything, like he'd always been able to see everything. I bent down to pick up the fries, hands trembling, heart pounding so hard I thought I might pass out. When I stood back up, Evan was still there, still watching. He hadn't moved, hadn't looked away. His expression was calm, almost peaceful, like he'd been waiting for this moment, like he'd planned it. The drive-thru timer beeped. 45 seconds. I was supposed to move. Supposed to take the next order, supposed to function. But I couldn't. I just stood there, frozen, staring back at the man I thought I'd fooled for years. The screen above my head flashed his order. I wanted to scream. Instead, I whispered, "Pull forward." Knowing my life had just collapsed, the order was simple. 2 cheeseburgers, medium fries, large Coke. Nothing special, nothing that required me to speak to him again. But the system flagged it for payment at the window. My window. I was the one working register. I was the one who'd have to hand him his food. Face to face. No glass between us. No distance. Just me and Evan and the truth I'd buried for years. I typed in the order with shaking fingers, tried to keep my breathing steady, tried to look normal, professional, like this was just another customer, just another shift. But Jessa was watching me now, eyebrows raised, confused by my reaction. "You know that guy?" she asked. I swallowed hard. "Yeah. He's my husband." Her eyes went wide. "Your blind husband? The one you talk about?" I nodded. She looked back at the monitor, at Evan, still sitting there, still staring. "He doesn't look blind," she said quietly. No, he didn't. And that was the problem. This is the moment I learned lies don't explode, they wait. My name is Lena Whitrow, and I cheated because I thought my husband couldn't see. I'd convinced myself it was victimless, that what he couldn't witness couldn't hurt him, that I was owed happiness, even if I had to find it in secret. I'd built an entire life around that belief, around the assumption that Evan lived in darkness, that he relied on me completely, that I was his eyes, his guide, his lifeline. And because of that, I told myself I deserved something for myself. Something he'd never know about. Something that didn't require me to feel guilty about. But standing in that McDonald's, uniform sticky with grease, hands still trembling, I realized the truth. Lies don't explode. They don't shatter dramatically in one big confrontation. They wait. They sit quietly in the background, gathering weight until the exact wrong moment. Until you're vulnerable, unprepared, exposed. And then they collapse everything at once. That's what was happening now. Everything I'd built was collapsing, and Evan was just sitting there, watching it fall. Evan lost his sight years ago. That's what everyone believed. That's what I told myself when guilt got loud. It happened in an accident, a car crash. Not his fault. He'd been a passenger. The airbag deployed wrong. Something about the impact damaged his optic nerve. The doctor said he'd never see normally again. They used words like severe visual impairment and legally blind. They said he could perceive light and shadow, maybe vague shapes, but no detail, no clarity, no faces. I believed them. Everyone believed them. Evan wore dark glasses when we went out, used a cane sometimes. let me guide him through crowds. He never drove, never read, never watched TV. He lived like a blind man, and I lived like the wife of a blind man, patient, helpful, praised by everyone who saw how devoted I was, how selfless, how strong. They didn't know the truth. Didn't know that behind closed doors I resented him, resented the weight of being someone's guide, someone's caretaker, someone's entire world. So I found escapes, small ones at first, then bigger, then constant. And I told myself he'd never know. How could he? He couldn't see me. At first, I was the perfect wife. I guided his steps, read his mail, played the role people praised. I meant it in the beginning. When Evan first lost his sight, I was devastated for him. I held his hand through every doctor's appointment, every therapy session, every moment of frustration when he knocked something over or couldn't find his phone. I learned how to describe things, how to guide without pulling, how to be patient when he needed extra time. I rearranged the furniture so he wouldn't trip, labeled everything in Braille, downloaded audiobooks, made sure his life could continue, even if it looked different now. People called me a saint. His family called me a blessing. Strangers at the grocery store told me I was inspiring. And I liked it. Liked being seen as good, as selfless, as devoted. It felt like purpose, like I mattered. But eventually, the praise wasn't enough. Eventually, the routine became suffocating. And I started to wonder what my life would have looked like if Evan hadn't gotten in that car. If he could still see. If I wasn't responsible for everything. That's when the resentment started. Quiet, creeping, inevitable. But caring turned into routine. Routine turned into resentment. I felt invisible next to a man the world pitied. At parties, people asked about Evan, how he was doing, how he was coping, how brave he was. No one asked about me. No one noticed I was tired, that I'd given up my hobbies because I didn't have time, that I couldn't go anywhere without planning around his needs. I became the woman who stood next to the blind man. That's it. That's all I was. His helper, his guide, his shadow. I started going out alone more. Told him I needed space, needed time with friends. He never argued, never questioned, just nodded and said he understood. So I took longer trips, stayed out later, started meeting people he didn't know. Men, specifically, men who saw me, who flirted, who made me feel like I existed outside of being someone's caretaker. At first, it was just conversation. Harmless, flattering. But harmless doesn't stay harmless when you're starving for attention. And I was starving. So I crossed the line, and then I kept crossing it, over and over. Because I could, because he couldn't see, because I convinced myself I deserved it. I told myself I deserved to feel wanted again. That what he couldn't see couldn't hurt him. The first time I met someone at a bar, he was charming, funny, looked at me like I was the only person in the room. We talked for hours. He didn't know I was married. I didn't mention it. When he kissed me in the parking lot, I kissed him back. I told myself it was just one time, a mistake, a moment of weakness. But when I got home, Evan was on the couch listening to a podcast, completely unaware. He smiled when I walked in, asked if I had fun. I said yes, and he believed me. That's when I realized how easy it was, how simple. He couldn't see the guilt on my face, couldn't see the lipstick I'd wiped off in the car. Couldn't see anything, so I did it again. Different guy, different excuse, same result. And each time, I justified it. I'm unhappy. I'm lonely. I'm giving so much. I'm getting nothing back. What he doesn't know won't hurt him. I repeated it like a mantra, and eventually, I believed it. Convinced myself I wasn't doing anything wrong, just surviving, just finding happiness where I could. The first affair felt wrong. The second felt easier. Soon, secrecy felt normal. I had a rotation. 3 different men. None of them knew about each other. None of them knew about Evan. I compartmentalized everything. Lena the wife, Lena the caretaker, Lena the woman who went out Thursday nights and came home smelling like someone else's cologne. I kept my phone locked, cleared my browser history, washed my clothes immediately after coming home. I was careful, methodical, and Evan never said anything, never asked where I'd been, never questioned the late nights or the new habits. I thought that meant he didn't notice, didn't care. Or maybe, deep down I thought he was relieved. Relieved to have time to himself. Relieved not to be a burden. Relieved that I was still there at all. The guilt faded over time, replaced by routine, by normalcy. Cheating became just another part of my life, like grocery shopping or paying bills. Something I did, something I managed, something I no longer questioned. I was good at it. Almost proud of how well I balanced everything. How seamlessly I lived two lives. I thought I was untouchable. I was wrong. I talked on the phone near him, changed clothes in the same room. He never reacted. I thought I was careful. I wasn't. I got lazy, careless. I'd take calls from other men while Evan was in the next room, speak in low voices, sure but still audible. I'd change out of the clothes I wore on dates right in front of him, toss them in the laundry, spray perfume. He never turned his head, never commented, never gave any indication he noticed. So I stopped worrying, stopped being cautious. I brought things home, gifts from men I was seeing, small things, a necklace, a scarf. I told Evan I bought them for myself. He just nodded, said they sounded nice. Once I came home with my shirt buttoned wrong. I realized it halfway through a conversation with him and fixed it quickly, heart pounding. But he didn't react, didn't pause, didn't ask. I thought I was safe, thought I was clever, thought I was in control. But looking back now, standing in this McDonald's, hands still shaking, I realize he saw everything. He always saw everything. And I was too arrogant to notice. Sometimes Evan turned his head too fast. Sometimes he asked questions that landed too close to the truth. There were moments, small ones, moments I dismissed because I wanted to. Like the time I came home late and before I even said hello, Evan asked, "Who were you with?" Not "Where were you?" Who? I laughed it off, said I was with my friend Rachel. He didn't push, just nodded. But his jaw was tight. Or the time I walked into the living room and he turned toward me immediately, too immediately, like he'd been watching the door, waiting. I froze mid-step and he smiled, said, "I heard your car pull up." But the driveway was gravel. You couldn't hear tires on gravel from inside the house. I ignored it, told myself I was paranoid. That guilt was making me imagine things. But the moments kept happening. Little slips, little inconsistencies, like the way he always seemed to know when I was wearing something new, or how he'd hand me my phone before I even asked where it was, or how he never stumbled anymore, never knocked things over, never needed my help the way he used to. I should have noticed. Should have questioned. But I didn't, because questioning meant admitting the possibility that I was wrong, that he could see, that I'd been caught all along. Once he said, "You smell different today." I laughed it off. My heart didn't. It was a Saturday morning. I'd just come back from a coffee date that turned into more than coffee. I showered at the guy's place, used his soap, his shampoo, came home feeling clean, safe, untraceable. Evan was in the kitchen when I walked in. He didn't turn around, just kept pouring his coffee. Then he said it, casual, quiet. "You smell different today." I froze. "What? Your perfume or shampoo, something." "It's different." My mind raced. I forced a laugh. "Oh, yeah, ran out of my usual stuff, borrowed Rachel's." He nodded slowly, took a sip of coffee. "Smells nice." That was it. He didn't press, didn't accuse, just made a comment and moved on. But my heart was pounding, my hands were clammy. I stood there, staring at his back, wondering if he knew, wondering how much he could tell, wondering if I'd just given myself away. But then he started talking about something else, something mundane. And I convinced myself I was overreacting, that it was just an observation, nothing more. But I stopped using other people's showers after that, just in case. I brought men into our house while he was home. I thought that made me powerful. It made me cruel. The worst part wasn't the cheating. It was the audacity. I'd bring someone over while Evan was upstairs. Tell him I had a friend visiting, that we'd be in the living room. He'd say, "Okay, stay out of the way, trust me." And I'd sit on our couch with another man, kissing him, touching him, pretending my husband didn't exist. Sometimes I could hear Evan moving around upstairs, the floor creaking, water running, and I'd smile, feel a sick thrill at getting away with it, at being so close to disaster and still untouched. I told myself Evan didn't know, couldn't know, that his world was limited to sounds and vague shapes, that I was safe, invisible, untouchable. But I wasn't powerful. I was cruel. I was taking advantage of someone I'd promised to protect, someone who trusted me, someone who'd lost so much already, and I didn't care, didn't stop, just kept pushing, kept testing, kept seeing how far I could go before something broke. I thought I was winning. I was just digging my own grave. He never accused me, never raised his voice. That silence felt like permission. Evan was always calm, always patient, always understanding, even when I came home late, even when I made excuses that didn't quite add up, even when I snapped at him for asking too many questions. He never yelled, never demanded answers, never made me feel guilty. And I took that as permission. I thought his silence meant he didn't care, that he'd checked out emotionally, that maybe he was even relieved I'd found someone outside of our marriage, that it took pressure off him, made things easier. So I kept going, kept lying, kept assuming his quietness was acceptance. But silence isn't always peace. Sometimes it's observation, sometimes it's patience, sometimes it's someone giving you enough rope to hang yourself. And that's what Evan was doing. He was watching, waiting, documenting, letting me dig deeper and deeper into my own betrayal. Because he knew. He'd always known. And he was just waiting for the right moment to show me. Back at McDonald's, Evan paid in exact change. He didn't fumble, didn't miss. I handed him the receipt through the drive-thru window. My hands were still shaking. He reached out, took it, and counted out exact change from his wallet. No hesitation, no feeling around for the right bills. Just pulled out a 20, 2 ones, and 3 quarters, placed them in my palm. His fingers were steady, confident. I stared at the money, then at him. "You forgot the Coke," he said. His voice was calm, even, like this was a normal transaction, like we were strangers. I turned, grabbed the cup, filled it with ice and Coke, hands trembling so badly I almost dropped it. When I handed it to him, he took it without looking away from my face. Our eyes met, really met, and in that moment, I saw it. He wasn't guessing, wasn't approximating. He was looking directly at me, seeing me, fully, completely. I wanted to say something, to ask, to scream, but my throat closed up. He set the drink in his cup holder. "Thank you, Lena," he said quietly. Then he drove away, and I stood there, frozen, knowing. When I handed him the bag, his fingers brushed mine, steady, certain. The touch lasted half a second, but it felt intentional, purposeful. Not the fumbling, searching touch of someone who couldn't see, but the deliberate contact of someone who knew exactly where my hand was, who wanted me to know he knew. I pulled back like I'd been burned. He didn't. Just held the bag, eyes still on me, expression unreadable. "Have a good day," I whispered. It came out choked, broken. He nodded. "You too." Then he pulled forward, out of the drive-thru lane, out of the parking lot, out of sight. I stood there at the window, watching his car disappear, feeling my entire world tilt. Jessa came up beside me. What the hell was that? I couldn't answer. Couldn't breathe. Couldn't process what had just happened. My blind husband had just ordered food from me, paid in exact change, made deliberate eye contact, and walked away like it was nothing, like he did this every day, like he'd been doing this all along. I clocked out early, told my manager I was sick, drove home in silence, and waited. Later that night, he said quietly, "We need to talk." No anger, no sadness, just finality. I came home to find Evan sitting at the kitchen table, hands folded, posture straight, waiting. He didn't look up when I walked in, didn't acknowledge me, just sat there, still, silent. I put my keys on the counter, my purse on the chair, tried to act normal. "Hey," I said. My voice cracked. He didn't respond, just sat there. Finally, after what felt like hours, he spoke. "We need to talk." Not a question, not a suggestion, a statement. I sat down across from him. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. "Okay." He looked at me then, really looked at me, and I saw it again. The clarity, the focus, the knowing. "I need you to stop lying," he said quietly. No anger in his voice, no sadness, just finality. Like he'd already made a decision and was just informing me of it. I opened my mouth, closed it, opened it, again. "I don't." "Stop," he said. Firm, final, just stop. So I did, and waited for the truth to finally land. That's when he told me the truth. He was never completely blind. The words came out slow, measured, like he'd practiced them. "I can see," he said, "not perfectly, but enough." I stared at him. My brain couldn't process it, couldn't make sense of what he was saying. "What?" "I can see shapes, movement, faces when they're close. I'm visually impaired, legally blind, but I'm not helpless. I never was." My stomach dropped. "But the doctors said I'd never see normally again." "And I don't, but I see enough." He leaned forward, hands still folded, eyes locked on mine. "Enough to know you've been cheating on me for 3 years. Enough to see you bring men into our house. Enough to watch you lie to my face every single day." The room spun. I gripped the edge of the table. "Evan." "I wanted to know," he said quietly. I wanted to know who you were when you thought no one was watching. His voice cracked. Just slightly. Just enough that I heard it. And now I know. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't defend myself. Because there was no defense. He knew. He'd always known. And I'd been too arrogant to see it. He could see shapes, movement, faces up close, enough to know everything. He explained it calmly, clinically, like he was describing the weather. After the accident, his vision didn't disappear completely. It just diminished. He could see light and dark, could track movement, could make out faces when they were close enough, could read large print if he really focused. The doctors told him he'd never drive again, never read a book normally, never see fine details. And that was true, but it didn't mean he was helpless, didn't mean he lived in darkness. He just let people believe that. Let me believe that, because it was easier. Because people treated him differently when they thought he was blind. With pity, with patience, with lowered expectations. And I'd fallen for it. Completely. Assumed he couldn't see me, couldn't see my lies, couldn't see the men I brought into our house. But he saw enough to know when I changed my clothes in front of him, enough to see me on the phone whispering to someone else, enough to recognize when I came home smelling like another man, enough to know everything. And he never said a word, just watched and waited. He said he stopped loving me the day I assumed he was helpless. I didn't lose my love for you in the accident, he said quietly. I lost it the day you stopped seeing me as a person. I didn't understand, not at first. He leaned back, crossed his arms, looked at me with an expression I'd never seen before. Disappointment. You looked at me and saw a burden, a project, someone to manage. You stopped asking what I wanted, stopped including me in decisions, stopped seeing me as your husband. That's not. It is, he said firmly. You made every choice for me, rearranged the house without asking, scheduled my appointments, picked my clothes. You turned me into a child. And then you resented me for it. My throat tightened. Because he was right. I had done that. Taken over everything, assumed he couldn't handle it, assumed he needed me to. And the worst part, he continued, voice dropping, is that you used my disability as an excuse to betray me. You thought I couldn't see, couldn't know, couldn't catch you, and that made it easy. He stood, walked to the counter, pulled out a folder, dropped it on the table in front of me. But I did know, the whole time. While I was cheating, he was documenting, saving messages, tracking dates. I opened the folder. My hands were shaking. Inside were printouts, screenshots, dates, timelines. Everything. Messages I thought I'd deleted. Photos I'd sent to other men. Calendar entries marking when I'd been out late. Credit card statements highlighting charges at hotels I'd lied about. Even security footage from our doorbell camera, showing me bringing someone into our house while Evan was upstairs. He'd saved everything. Every lie. Every betrayal. Every moment I thought I was getting away with it. How? I whispered. He sat back down. I'm not completely blind, Lena. I can use a computer. I can read texts if I zoom in. I can access our shared accounts. I can do a lot more than you thought I could. I stared at the evidence, at the proof of my own cruelty, at the meticulous, methodical way he'd documented everything. Why didn't you say anything? I asked. My voice broke. He looked at me. Really looked at me. Because I wanted to know who you were when you thought no one was watching. And now I know. The finality in his voice was crushing. You're not the person I married, he said quietly. You're not even close. I wanted to know who you were when you thought no one was watching, he said. Those words echoed in my head, over and over. He'd been testing me, testing my character, testing what I'd do when I thought I was invisible, when I thought there were no consequences. And I'd failed, spectacularly. I wanted to defend myself, to explain, to say I was lonely, that I felt trapped, that I deserved happiness. But the words sounded hollow even in my head, because none of it justified what I'd done. None of it excused bringing men into our house, lying to his face, using his disability as a shield for my betrayal. I was cruel, and he knew it, had known it for years, and instead of confronting me, he just watched, documented, waited. I filed for divorce this morning, he said quietly. The papers will be delivered tomorrow. I looked up. Evan, I'm done, Lena. I've been done for a long time. I just needed to be sure. Sure of what? He stood, walked toward the door, paused. That leaving you wouldn't be a mistake. Then he left. And I sat there, alone, surrounded by evidence of my own betrayal, knowing I had no one to blame but myself. He filed for divorce with evidence I didn't know existed. I didn't fight. I couldn't. The papers arrived the next day, hand-delivered by a process server. Petition for dissolution of marriage. Grounds, adultery. Attached was a USB drive, labeled evidence. I didn't open it. Didn't need to. I already knew what was on it. Everything, every message, every lie, every moment of betrayal. Evan's lawyer called me that afternoon, outlined the terms. Evan would keep the house, the savings, the car. I'd get my personal belongings, nothing else. No alimony, no settlement, just my things and a clean break. I could have fought it, could have hired my own lawyer, could have argued that the evidence was obtained without my consent. But I didn't, because I knew the truth. I knew what I'd done, knew I deserved this, knew that fighting would only drag out the inevitable and make me look worse. So I signed, didn't read the fine print, didn't negotiate, just signed. And within 6 weeks it was over. 6 years of marriage dissolved, final, done. And I had no one to blame but myself. He kept the house, the savings, his dignity. I kept the shame. I moved into a small apartment across town. 1 bedroom, cheap, lonely. Everything I owned fit into my car. I didn't have much. Most of the furniture was Evan's, most of the nice things. I'd never paid attention to what was mine and what was ours. Never thought I'd need to. Now I had a mattress on the floor, a folding chair, a lamp. That was it. I went to work, came home, sat in, silence. The weight of what I'd done crushed me. Not because I missed Evan, but because I finally saw myself. Really saw myself. The way he must have seen me. Selfish, cruel, arrogant. I'd assumed he was helpless, that I was indispensable, that I could do whatever I wanted because he needed me too much to leave. But I was wrong. He didn't need me. He'd been fine without me all along. I was the one who was helpless, the one who couldn't handle being alone. The one who needed constant validation, constant attention, constant proof that I mattered. And now I had none of it, just shame. And the knowledge that I'd destroyed the one person who truly loved me. I thought he lived in darkness, but the truth is, I was the one who never saw him at all. Looking back now, I realize the irony. I spent years assuming Evan couldn't see, that he lived in shadows, that he needed me to navigate the world. But the truth is, I was the one who was blind. Blind to his strength, blind to his awareness, blind to the fact that he was watching everything, seeing everything, knowing everything. I never saw him as a person, just a role, a responsibility, a burden I resented carrying. And when I cheated, I didn't see the betrayal for what it was. I saw it as survival, as something I deserved, as victimless. But Evan saw it clearly, saw me clearly, saw every lie, every cruelty. Every moment I thought I was getting away with it. He wasn't the one living in darkness. I was. Blind to my own selfishness, blind to the damage I was causing, blind to the reality that actions have consequences. And now, sitting in this empty apartment, working at McDonald's, living with the weight of what I've done, I finally see. But it's too late. Evan's moved on, and I'm left here, alone in the darkness I created, knowing I have no one to blame but myself.